May 18th meeting of the regular meeting of the Town of Poughkeepsie Planning Board. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a complete board this evening. Don Beer, our engineer, won't be with us this evening. And application number 1 is a public hearing, Marist College, 51 Fulton redevelopment, site plan hearing regarding a site plan for a change of use and renovation of 51 Fulton Street to accommodate office, classroom, studio space, site modifications to 51 and adjoining 57 Fulton Street, pedestrian improvements to the Fulton Street right-of-way, campus sidewalk connections to the south, 40 Fulton Street, 51, 57, and 40 Fulton Street zoned FC, Fairway Center, and IN Institutional District 5.607 acres, non-listed action, Marist Real Property Services, Inc. owner. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm John Andrews, Brody Soyka Andrews. I'm the engineer from Marist College, and with me, as you all know, is Justin Butwell, Director of Physical Plant for Marist College. Just real quick, save the board a lot of time. We have received the comments from your planning staff and the others. We acknowledge that they all need to be addressed. We are in the process of doing that. We had thought we had addressed most of them, but a lot of them are cleanup items, and we will take care of them. Just a couple quick things. There are a couple seeker items that Eric raised. One had to deal with the contamination on the Duso site next door. We were able to obtain a clarification from DEC. There was a typo in their letter. They left out the word no. So there are no known contaminants, which kind of unnerved us because, quite honestly, our studies had shown there was nothing there either. So we thought they knew something we didn't. The other issue deals with the seeker and the archaeology. We've been able to compile both the old Sanborn maps and the historical photographs. This site has been extensively disturbed. There used to be an old slaughterhouse on the site, the back portion of it. That was knocked down, and then the front portion, where there was only a garage, has now been occupied by the old Resource Recovery Agency, and that's what Marist inherited. So if you look at the photographs, and we will submit them to Eric, every portion of the site has been undermined at one time or another, so we doubt very seriously there's anything left. And other than that, the only other issue deals with the traffic control items. We are in receipt of the comments of your police department. We have forwarded them on to our traffic engineer. He takes no disagreement with them. We will be amending our plan to accommodate that. It might not meet his exact numbers. We have to make sure they're put in the best location visibility-wise and layout-wise so it doesn't conflict with anything else. He was also going to supplement his submittal with a full detailed letter outlining why he believes what he's proposed is the correct for this location, addressing some of the other options that have been explored over time. But he again believes that we've got the best option here, and if there are any alternatives, he will lay them out for you. We expect to have that letter into staff mid next week.
Okay, great. Thank you. For the board's information, we're not going to be having a special meeting. They're going to be coming back on the regular meeting on June 15th. And we're not going to take any action on anything tonight. And we'll open the public hearings and we'll adjourn them until June 15th. So that's it, Eric.
John, I think, stole my thunder. There's a bunch of comments. We'll work with him on it. We've already had some discussions. Tonight, we are recommending that the board open the public hearing and adjourn it, and then to defer action on the application.
Okay. At this point, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And no one signed up to speak at this public hearing. Anyone in the audience care to comment? No, I move we adjourn the public hearing until June 15th, 2017.
Second.
Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. You go around the board and pretty much a question and answer, or maybe just questions. Let me start with Peter tonight.
Just 2 items. To the EAF mapper, which really paints with a broad brush.
Yes.
I printed out the long form and came up with the environmental site remediation comments. but there's nothing specific about 51 Fulton at all. You know, it addressed a half a dozen other sites. So I think that's problematic. I think the state is really going to have to start doing some homework and addressing some of the issues that are coming up, because it really puts you, I think, a lot of applicants at a disadvantage, because it red flags a lot of things that really aren't.
That's our sentiments exactly, and interestingly enough, we, obviously, before Maris purchases these, we do our own due diligence, which revealed nothing. When we got the DEC letter, we were quite surprised, and when I contacted DEC to ask for a clarification and say, do you have any information, the young lady said, well, I read my letter again, it says no, known, and I said, no, if you read it again, and she read it again, she says, oh my goodness, it's a typo. So she corrected it, and it's now clear, and she actually talked to the environmental remediation people. And if you remember, when we were here for steel plant, there was a concern there because of the plume, but that it's never reached our properties. So we were kind of surprised, but I thank you for your comments because it concerned us.
If you stand at where you have the crosswalk positioned, there's a utility pole right in front of the building, pretty much, and I went and stood there. If you're on the south side of Fulton Street, you really don't have a problem, I don't think, with the sight distance east or west. It's fine. If you stand on the north side of Fulton Street, in front of the building, there are some large juniper bushes that block the view, and then there's the hill curves and goes down. If there's some way that you could elevate the north side, there's going to be a sidewalk?
There is a sidewalk. We will verify that. I know our traffic engineer went out there and he did select those sites, so I will verify with him lines of sight.
The site, I think, would be okay if it were elevated so that you would have a view over the hill. If you stand on the south side of Fulton Street, where there is a sidewalk in front of the townhouses, you have a clear view of the traffic coming up the hill. On the north side, you don't. You can't see anything at all. So if you could create maybe a small berm, I mean, I'm not an engineer, before you lay down the sidewalk to provide some kind of elevation there so that you would have a sight distance from the north side. I think otherwise, all the other things that you've done to address the pedestrian crosswalk, I think would be fine.
Okay, we will take that into account and take a look at it.
John, maybe could you take a quick look at the sight line distances?
Sure.
That
I know
might be the easiest way to get at it because
Greeley's office has done that, but I'll follow up with him again tomorrow, and we will make sure, and if I can elevate it, I will, because there's got that dip in front of the building, as you know, so we're up a little bit higher anyway, but I'll see what we can do and try to get that little elevation there.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Peter. Carl, anything?
Sarah, I don't know if those junipers were something that would be taken out as part of demolition too, or not, or if are they further down? Or?
They definitely block the view for a pedestrian going across the road.
Something to look at.
Be removed with something lower?
I guess my concerns were also just the crosswalk. I don't know if you got that in your packet. That's one possibility, to give it bright paint, so it would.
We did not get that. Eric had mentioned it, and that's one of the things that our traffic engineer is going to be looking at to see if there's any benefit to adding those.
Okay, yep. That's all I got.
Thank you. Ben?
I don't have anything. I think this is pretty well covered now. These guys took care of it.
Thank you. Ed?
Based on the discussions that you've had with Eric and all the things that are in this memo, I think take care of that, we're all set.
I'm fine at this time.
Okay. Brian?
Sure. No, everything works.
Okay. I move the planning board determine that the application is incomplete for seeker review, pending further elaboration on the proposed development and its potential effects.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I move the planning board defer conditional site plan approval for the Marist College 51 Fulton redevelopment site plan, subject to the following: 1 through 9, and any comments made this evening.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that you just add a 10th condition, amended letter of clarification from DEC relative to the omission in their April 11th letter.
Does the second agree to that?
Yes, but we did get a memo from DEC.
It did just arrive, Craig, you may not have it because it arrived just a couple of hours ago. It's an email from the New York State DEC dated May 17th, in which it states in part, it's come to my attention as a typographical letter in my letter of April 11 from the Division of Environmental Remediation regarding the site, and there is no known history of contaminants at the proposed work site. I apologize for the confusion. That's from Sarah A. Polachek of the New York State DEC. Is that, do you need more than that, or is the email sufficient?
If the board's satisfied with that?
Well, I'll include it, the latest DEC letter be included in the package.
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, Eric has also asked that we amend our EAF to clarify these issues, so that letter will appear as part of our EAF packet that you will be responding to, so you will have it duplicate.
Okay. Got it. So 11 will be amend the EAF.
Second.
Okay, second, I call a question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, that's that one. Marist College, public hearing number 2, Marist College Steel Plant Studio, site plan public hearing regarding construction of a 37,000 square foot two-story addition to the existing Marist College Steel Plant Studio, complete renovation of the existing building, site modifications to existing parking, walkways, drainage, grading, utilities, and lighting, and consolidation of 4 parcels into 1 parcel. 1 and 2 Beck Place, and 63 North Road, zoned IN institutional, 3.59 acres, an unlisted action. Marist College and Marist Real Property Services owner.
Good evening, again. For the record, it's John Andrews, Rhodey Syke Andrews, along with Justin Butwell from Marist College. This project was previously before you. I will again try not to steal Eric's thunder, but we have received his comments. We've received the comments of staff and engineering. There's nothing there that we find difficult or can't answer, and we intend to answer. We do have a technical glitch, however. Given the Poughkeepsie Journal did us a slight disservice and did not timely publish our public hearing notice. So even though it was mailed out, we were a day late. We did not meet your standard 10-day requirement in advance of the meeting. I did provide you an affidavit of publication when they did get around to publishing it. So we will need to properly republish for the next meeting, I believe, because this one was defective. So I think you need to do a curative renotice for the June 15th meeting, I believe.
If that's the case, I don't need to open a public hearing, if they're going to republish.
You're going to republish? Given that there are people here on the public hearing, we were advised by council on Tuesday that we should open the public hearing and adjourn it.
Okay, that's fine, but they're going to republish anyway.
Which is fine.
Okay, fine.
So moved.
I have to let them finish first.
And again, this is I think you're all familiar with where the Steel Plant Studio is now. It houses the Marist Art Studio. We are putting an addition on effectively a small portion of the north, the east and south sides. It will be a 2-story addition. We will leave the main portion of the steel plant intact. That addition will enable us to move our fashion curriculum over to this building. So it will now house arts and fashion, which we hope increases the synergy and viability of both projects. It brings additional population to this side of campus, and it serves as kind of a bookend with our recently completed natural science and allied health. There's going to be a little different style to this. It's going to probably be, and I'll do the architect a disservice, but it's going to be kind of like a modern industrial look. So it will kind of maintain the image of the older art studio, but improve it with some of the brick and steel features that you would want in a building like that. We are maintaining the parking lot where it is. We have to shrink it a little bit. That is one of the reasons that we're creating additional parking up at 51 Fulton. And when we're all said and done, the net Marist will probably benefit about 50 parking spaces, I believe the number is. We're changing the sidewalk configuration a little bit. We've worked with the fire department. If you remember now, we have that big loop that goes around. We have the concrete loop in front of the building that goes through the parking lot. Because of where the building's going, we're eliminating the loop. The fire department is going to live with a through sidewalk all the way out to the Washington Avenue extension. So they'll be able to pull in and pull straight out. They've also made a slight concession in that.
Take the microphone, John, please.
Yes, I will. Thank you. They've made a slight concession, and this is going to be a courtyard that will match the courtyard at Natural Science. And what we're going to be doing is putting in a depressed curb all the way along here, so in the event of an emergency, the fire department would actually pull right up in front of this building. And then they've asked that we create this to be a no parking zone down here, so that they could actually set their ladder truck here, since this is the two-story portion. So they've kind of accommodated and worked with us. I don't think we've moved the fire department connection to be right here, so they're pretty satisfied. This will overlook the walkway. An interesting component here is there will be a retail facility for our fashion program here, as well as we'll be maintaining the galleries. Little unusual thing here, and I will say it for the record, we do need a New York State DOT highway work permit. We are not really doing anything in the New York State DOT right away, but if you look carefully at the drawing, the back wall of this building is actually the edge of the New York State DOT right away. When they did Route 9, they shortened the building, the original building, so that's where they made the property line. So in working with our construction manager for the safety of our students and any of the workmen working there, we're going to be moving some of our fencing out into the DOT right away. DOT's has no problem granting us a permit for that. It's a miscellaneous permit. They've given us the criteria. And then we've discussed with them the potential for, during some of the operations of closing down a lane on Route 9 so that we can afford an extra layer of protection. They're in full accord with that, and they've kind of made it relatively simple, so that will be wrapped up into our permit. If we need it, we just wanted to have that opportunity. Because quite honestly, if you're working on the roof, which we will be doing, and something goes wrong, you're right there. There isn't much between us and Route 9. But other than that, it's pretty simple and straightforward, and we believe it's a perfect complement for what went on at Natural Science. The landscaping and the other features will be laid out almost identical, so that will be our new academic node on this side of campus.
Thank you. Eric, anything?
Nope, I did have one comment in the review regarding that pedestrian plaza that you just pointed out. I hadn't realized you'd configured it that way for the fire department, and it's on the outside of a right-angled bend for approaching traffic, with nothing in between the vehicles and a pedestrian area, but a drop curb, not even a regular curb. So I had raised the question of whether that warranted another look, either with regard to the vehicle path or protection.
Eric, if you were to walk out there today, we are not changing anything, actually. We're actually just straightening the curb line out, because right now it runs at an odd angle to the building, and the architects wanted to have a straight line. So there is a drop curb there now. Be a drop curb, and we've never had a problem with traffic coming down, because that's the way it goes into the parking lot now. In matter of fact, the only thing that's different is on the existing conditions. If you come down the road now, you'll realize that major concrete artery is here. Mm-hmm. So we've never even had a problem with cars going up that way. We do have a problem with cars going down around and out. But the concern that you raised, we did look at it, and it's never been an issue there. So, and we're really not changing the traffic pattern, so we didn't perceive it to be a problem. And it will be, there should be a sufficient differentiation that it shouldn't be an issue, because we'll have that big landscaping. We're maintaining that landscaping area right here and putting a sitting wall. So the cars will actually have to kind of follow the traffic pattern, or they'll run smack into that.
It might even be an improvement, because cars do go on that sidewalk out of habit. They feel like it's back place again. So, and that's going away.
Okay. Otherwise,
I just want to make one note before you go. There is a brise soleil in this building. It's not just a brick building. So it does have a brise soleil with a frit pattern that indicates the Marist M on it. So there is a little bit to the architecture that, when you get the submittal, if you look at that more carefully.
Okay. So I assume you'll bring the elevations next time.
As always, I do the architects disservice because I don't necessarily look up. I only look at the ground most of the time. My apologies.
So with that, we're just recommending the board open the public hearing and adjourn it and defer further action.
Okay. I move we open the public hearing. Moved and second to call a question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Anyone in the audience wish to comment on application number 2, public hearing number 2? Seeing no one, I move that we adjourn the public hearing to June 15th, 2017.
Second.
Moved and second to call a question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. That date sounds familiar, June 5th. Oh, it's my wife's anniversary. Yes, okay. I'm in trouble. Okay.
It's an interesting way to look at
Let's
it.
go around the board. Let me start with Carl this time.
Yeah, I really didn't have a lot. You explained the parking. You're adding more parking up there, even though you have a loss of parking here. Looks like it's going to be a nice addition to the facilities at the college. I didn't see a bike rack on the chart, but I assume you will put one in where necessary.
Dangerous thing.
You have one at the other place.
They have a whole supply of them.
They do.
They do. It's in the Carl Whitehead warehouse. Thanks, Carl. Ben?
Oh, you guys pretty much cover everything.
Is there going to be an issue with parking for people going in and using the retail store? You said there's going to be a retail component.
It's mostly a campus retail component,
Okay.
and so there shouldn't be, but this area typically has an excess of parking, so we don't expect it to be a problem.
Right, the retail is the merchandising students sell, their
To
stuff.
other
So it's really to the campus community.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
And in point of fact, if you were to go to Marist College today, the facility exists in the form of kiosks in Donnelly.
Right.
So,
That's
well,
all right, so that's what's going to be over here.
we're giving them a little better marketing ploy, so they're going to get actually a space to market.
Okay, good. Thank you. Ed?
You just raised a question that's running through my mind. What are you doing with Donnelly? Is that next on the list?
Well, there's always a need for classrooms and offices, which is what they're moving out of,
Is Donnelly the oldest building on the campus?
other than the original estate buildings.
Yeah.
They keep going round and round on Donald.
No pun intended?
I had to say that. Okay,
You had to, John.
thank you.
I'm fine with where we're at.
Rocco?
I'm fine. Not gonna say no jokes either, sorry.
Hey, I tried.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to planning board to turn in, Peter, sorry.
Just one thing, going quickly back to 51, and pay some attention to the photometrics for that crosswalk, because I didn't see any streetlights there.
Yes,
We want it to be well lit.
We haven't got those yet.
There are actually lights shown on there. We're taking the Marist typical brand-new LED parking lot lights. We're putting them on each side of the highway at the intersection of the sidewalks.
Take the mic.
Yep, let me just get this situated properly.
We're back to 51 Fulton.
Right.
And just FYI, Peter, there was, one of the comments in the last review was a request to provide photometric.
They don't stand out because of the symbol we used, but there is a light proposed on this side of the crosswalk, and there is a light proposed on this side of the crosswalk. Eric has also some comments about making sure they're properly oriented, so we will be looking at that. But the idea was to put two lighted nodes where the crosswalk and the sidewalk all meet.
When you say node, how high?
Oh, these are typical Marist. They are 20 foot to the light, and they are
Oh,
LEDs.
terrific. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. Anything else, Peter? John? Yeah. I want to make sure everybody was done. So I move that we, planning board determine the application is incomplete for seeker. review and a waterfront consistency determination pending further elaboration on the proposed development and its potential effects.
Second.
Moved and seconded, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0. Move the planning board defer action on the site plan application subject to the following 1 through 10. And any comments that were made this evening.
Yeah, I think it's right there.
That's it.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Thank you all.
On the 15th,
You got it.
and hopefully we can get help get this wrapped up.
We will. Thank you very much.
Stay cool.
At this point, I'd like to have a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, suspend the rules for allowing comment on any other agenda items only. Call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Anyone on the in the audience wish to comment on any of the other agenda items? Seeing no one, I move we resume the rules.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we resume the rules. Call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Under other business, under plan reviews. McDonald Heights Town Center Site Plan, presentation and discussion of the McDonald Heights Center, Town Center project, a proposed mixed-use development including 288 to 350 residential dwelling units in apartments and townhouses, 85,000 to 180,000 square feet of mixed commercial development, recreation area, and associated parking. The property is located in the MHC McDonald Heights Center and IH Heavy Industry Districts, 928, 932, 935, and 936 Turnpike, Dutchess Turnpike, and Victory Lane, zoned MHC McDonald Heights Center and IH Heavy Industry, 60.87 acres. Type 1 action, Meadowview Properties, Inc., Meadowview Properties LLC, Kirchhoff Properties LLC, and Industrial Retro LLC owner.
Good evening, everyone. Richard Rang with the Kirchhoff Companies. Joining me is Giovanni Palladino and John Hettinger, also with Kirchhoff. And then we have some of the professionals in the audience in case any particular questions come up, representatives from VHB and from Insight Engineering.
Good.
Okay?
Yes. Thank you for coming in.
Our pleasure. Thank you for having us. We thought it was important to kind of present to the board where the plan is. It's been about a year since we had presented to you, and we wanted to kind of show you the progress that we've made, some of the changes that were made from the original application, and basically bring you up to speed, and to solicit any input we can possibly get from you. A little PowerPoint here, if everybody's got access to it.
Can everybody see?
You're all familiar with the site. This map is showing the actual boundaries of the district itself. We control most of the property within the district. There's only a couple of parcels, small parcels that we don't, that are not part of the application. The project spans both sides of Route 44, as similar to what we had proposed before. This slide you actually saw before. The design inspiration for trying to create the town center is focused on trying to create a pedestrian-friendly, sidewalk-oriented type community. This is the main street, so to speak, of the project that we're trying to produce. We're anticipating some restaurants, on-street dining, storefronts with some residential and office uses above. This you saw as well in the previous presentation. This is the streetscape that we're looking to create. And this particular one is Birkdale Village down in Huntersville, North Carolina. Large boulevard, on-street parking, sidewalks, buildings up close to the sidewalk, and street frontage retail and commercial uses. This is a slide of another project called Market Common down in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. While grander in scale than what we can do at McDonald Heights, it still brings forward the kind of concept that we're looking for with, with the stores on both sides, the boulevard running up the middle. In this particular one, there's parking on the boulevard side. We're not necessarily proposing that in our application. This is also showing 4-story buildings. We're only going to be proposing 2- and 3-story buildings on our site. Another example, Market Square, Lake Forest, Illinois, and this was actually the model that was brought to us originally As you recall, the original application had proposed a roundabout on Route 44. After getting some feedback from various agencies and other consultants, there was some concerns raised about the roundabout's ability to handle the pedestrian traffic from one side of Route 44 to the other, as well as the commercial users, the store owners and the businesses that are going to be located on this storefront, this street, in that the roundabout doesn't provide them the visibility that they would like to have within the community. So we ventured away from the roundabout, and now we're looking at what's referred to affectionately as the Lake Forest model. We had brought in a consultant by the name of Bob Gibbs. He's renowned nationwide in terms of performing commercial and retail market analyses, and he strongly recommended this application for this particular piece of property. Did you have a question, John?
Yeah, how old is this project?
You know, I can't answer that question, but we can probably get an answer if you just jot
Judging
down
from
notes.
the age of the cars, I'd say it's been around a while.
It has. This was actually a failed location, a commercial location that Bob was brought in to resurrect, so to speak, and this was his concept design.
Okay.
This is another view of that Lake Forest from the opposite end, showing that wide boulevard in the middle, retail, commercial uses on either side, and then some office and residential above. So we took those recommendations from Mr. Gibbs. Can you do me a favor and hand out those packages? And modified our site plan to a certain extent to try and accommodate that type of an intersection. And this package that Giovanni is handing out has both some site plan as well as some of the architectural elements that we're bringing into the job, much of which is going to be in the slide presentation. So just thought it might be something you wanted to flip through as we went through the rest of the presentation. Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Giovanni. All right, so the new plan incorporates some of those changes. This is an overall, you have some larger, views within the package right now, showing both sides of 44 and actually spanning from the Wartburg, Concord Village, Lutheran Care Facility, all the way down to the Wappinger Creek, showing obviously the dense development within the frontage along 44, and then all the open spaces that we're providing and recreational opportunities we're proposing down towards the creek. The principal difference between what we have here and what was in the original application is truly the roundabout. We're anticipated a signalized intersection on Route 44. That boulevard that runs up both sides of the road, opposite sides from 44, is about a 50-foot wide landscape boulevard. We're anticipating pedestrian-oriented uses in there. We have a pavilion shown in there, as well as sitting areas, some benches that'll accommodate both the residential and commercial uses in the community. These are the plans that were submitted as part of the application, the engineering plans. Didn't know if anybody had any specific questions about the plans, but that color rendering basically takes these plans and made it a little bit more presentable. Okay, I'm going to go back. I don't know how to go back. In any event, this particular plan here, you see you have Route 44. Here's that boulevard. Boulevard comes in for the first run of buildings and then next back down to a two-way street with on-street parking, continues all the way up.
Put it somewhere.
And centers on a residential building in the back. I'll go back, yeah. Well, we'll do that after I go through this slide. The residential uses are all around the perimeter. We cited residential uses along the existing residence, along Darrow. These are all two-story townhomes in this particular location. These are all elevator service corridor buildings in this area here. We have some garage parking that's available, obviously, to the residents here or anyone that would like to lease some garage space. These first units that anchor the Route 44 intersection, these L-shaped buildings here, provide frontage both on 44 as well as on the internal street. These middle units are actually a transitional type building. These are live-work units where you would anticipate somebody might have a shop downstairs and they would reside upstairs from the shop. And in the package, we have some renderings of the architecture we're proposing in this situation. Let's see. I wanted to go back, and I go back to that other plan right there. The other side, the side adjacent to the Wartburg Lutheran facilities, a similar arrangement at the entrance. The geometry is a little bit different because we didn't control quite as wide an area through this through the entrance there, but similar storefront type arrangements. And then again, the live-work units anchored by a commercial building in this case at the terminus of the entry road. These larger buildings, similar to the ones across the way, are elevated service corridor buildings, 3 stories. These in the front are 3-story walk-ups, breezeway type units as they're referred. We have our community center with a pool. We're going to actually relocate one of the existing barns on the site and reutilize it and repurpose it for mail building and a kids club community center, and that'll be served also by a playground right adjacent to it. In the corner over by Concord Village Drive, we're proposing now a bank and a daycare, both as freestanding pads as opposed to being in a mixed building. Okay. I can figure out where my cursor is on here. I can get to the next slide. I guess I can do it there. This is just the grading plan showing much of the same that we just discussed. And then back into the overall plan as well. In the packet, you have expanded views of both sides of the street, describing basically what I just described in the on the overall plan. The phasing of the project is currently anticipated to start in this northerly corner and work our way through. We felt that this would give us an opportunity to start development of the project before the need was for any controlled intersection, and give us the opportunity to create this Lake Forest intersection and start to create the boulevards into the ends while we're developing the other portions of the job. If anybody has any questions, certainly welcome them.
I see on the one slide in here that is Kirchhoff going to relocate his headquarters there?
We actually are considering it, yeah.
Kirchhoff building,
We debated whether or not we wanted to keep that on the presentation, but right now our thoughts are that building would become our new home. And we'll kind of get to that architecture, and I'll let Giovanni, who is our in-house architect, kind of talk to the architecture specifically as we...
You going to charge yourself rent?
We are, actually, yes.
That makes sense.
The owner of the building is not necessarily the company that's going to be leasing the space, so.
I understand. Okay.
All right, I'll let Giovanni take it over with...
Want to say a couple words first?
No, I mean,
I'm sorry.
If I may, I mean, just to your point, John, my name's John Hedinger. I'm the vice president of Kirchhoff, and Joe Kirchhoff is unfortunately not able to be here tonight, but your question kind of underscores just the importance of this project to us, how excited we are to be collaborating with you on it, and how eager we are to sort of take your feedback and continue progressing rapidly, towards it. So, with that, we'll turn it over to G and obviously Rich's work, but this is a major thing for our organization, and we're proud of the work that's been done and where this will go.
That's actually a pretty good idea, in my mind.
Good evening. The approach of the architecture was really, right now, very schematic, and the programming hasn't been worked out completely, but our approach to the architecture is to make sure that it complements the overall master plan. Okay, and if you really focused on the master plan, you'll notice that our primary focus is on walkability, the feeling that this is a town center, the feeling that this is a community where people can interact, both work and live in the same community. So the architecture has to support that principle, which is one of the principles of Bob Gibbs. So this is an example. What we have up right now is one of the main commercial buildings, the intersection.
That would be any of these buildings in this location here?
And what's important is the way the plan has been developed, even with the green, the two sides of the streets are connected visually and architecturally. And 44, just think of it as almost like a Main Street and Main Street intersection. So the architecture has to support that intersection. But going back to the walkability, if you look at this facade here, even the buildings themselves, we're trying to make it seem like that they've grown organically, that they're not all the same, they're not monolithic, they're not all the same color, but the architecture itself is symbolic of how a town center might have developed, originally back prior to World War II. So here, if you look at the building, there is even penetrations in the building themselves, following the design guidelines for the town, that it allows people that access through the building to connect anything that might be in the back, like parking. We've really tried to make sure that the parking was screened with these buildings. Want to go to the next slide?
These will be strictly commercial, there's no residential in the commercial ones?
Not necessarily. The ground floor is anticipated to be all commercial. The second floor is anticipated to be either office space or residential above.
On those units above, will they be one floor residential or perhaps two-floor apartment?
We're actually anticipating predominantly a two-story type arrangement for the residential above. If we ended up with an office and residence above that, that would end up being a flat. But I'm anticipating that we'll have living space on the second floor of the building and bedrooms on the third floor of the building.
Okay. Does that microphone work? Maybe it's better if I stand in front of it. Can you hear me?
Turn it on?
Maybe.
I was just curious as to what's the elevation change? That's kind of a steep slope over there on that one side.
Well, in the field area, it's not that significant in that southerly corner, southwesterly corner of the northwesterly side. It's kind of difficult. You can, like this area here, we have some topography that will
Take the microphone.
back into the hill.
Take the microphone. Got to use the mic, it's being recorded.
Sorry about that. In this corner here, you'll all recall there's a hill in that area. We're proposing to actually take some of that out and then try and utilize the hill itself. Right now, we're showing a dog park up in the hill.
I was just thinking about the walkability aspect about elevation
The
change.
predominant area that's being developed is the field area, and there really isn't a significant amount of elevation change until you get into this corner here.
Okay. Thank you.
So the previous slide that we had, we talked about this intersection here that crosses 44, so these are the commercial buildings. As we start to now transition from that retail core towards the residential, we felt that these buildings that you see up on the screen now would be a nice transition. I don't know if you're familiar with LiveWorks at all, but it might be somebody that might be an accountant that could have their store downstairs and live upstairs. Sort of, you see that example a lot, like in cities like Poughkeepsie and Newburgh and Middletown, that older style where I had my shop and my retail store downstairs, but I lived above it. So that we felt that this was a good transition. So you would basically almost own that whole thing. You would work downstairs and live upstairs. So that would be that transition through there. You want to go to the next slide?
Wrong way.
And then the final building that helps, again, define this square is our terminus building, which, as was mentioned before, potentially might be our Kirchhoff office. So that, again, acts as a terminating vista when people look up the screen, and that's the proposed structure right now. Again, everything right now is still in schematic phase. We still have to work through a lot of the programming, but we're really trying to define the architecture to make sure that it does support the master plan.
So that's building C on your plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Double check.
You want to switch
What was the
over?
question?
Is that
Building labeled as C on the
Yes,
plan?
on the plan. And to Gio's point, you can see in this rendering, we are anticipating a pass-through because the parking is predominantly at the rear of this building. So this will bring people both into the front of the building as well as to the streetscape to serve the other uses in the community.
And then the final two slides are just basically discussing the two pad sites, one being a potential bank and the other being a daycare. We just want you to understand that even if they're pad sites, we want to make sure that we have control over the architecture and that the aesthetic will match the overall master plan. So that's going to be something very critical to us. We'll have our own internal architectural guidelines to make sure that what's built there is cohesive with the rest of the plan.
Will these units upstairs have both front and rear access to get upstairs?
For the residential above, I don't know if that's been programmed to that level of detail at this point.
All right, I'll stop.
Okay, and then further in the package, you have the residential architecture that we're proposing now. This is the larger corridor buildings I was pointing out on the site plan. Three-story elevator serviced, primary main entrance. The two yellow doors on the side are only yellow so that you can see them effectively where they would be. Those are access to the stairwells within the building. But we think the architecture fits very well with with the area, and it's quite attractive. And if Gio needs to add any.
And the point here is that there's a cohesive architectural style that's going to be found throughout, even though there might be differences in the architecture itself. The vernacular will be the same.
Okay, the next building here is what I referred to as the Breezeway building before. It's a three-story walk-up. There's no elevator service in these buildings. And these are anticipated to serve, obviously, not necessarily the empty nester as the corridor buildings would with the elevator, but these would serve new families, new singles. We actually are looking into the possibility, and we're programmed right now, to have a couple of studio apartments in these units, as well as several one-bedrooms.
These are all one floor?
Yeah, these are all flat, yep.
Okay.
And then the last slide of the residential here is a townhouse unit. Individual garage and driveway to each of the units, and obviously everything here is vertical, typical living spaces on the first floor, and bedrooms upstairs. And you'll notice on the blow-up maps that you have, these buildings are all keyed to that map, so you can see which building is where on that plan. All right, I don't know if the board had much time to look at the development program that we put together, and it's just a lot of numbers and such, so I don't know if you really want to go over that now, but I have those in here as well if you needed to, if you had any specific questions about the way we structure the program. This is a summary sheet here. We have a total of 606,000 square feet of space being, gross floor space being developed. 122 is non-residential uses and 483 is residential. It all complies with the underlying zoning in terms of the ratios between commercial space and residential space, as well as retail versus, total non-residential space.
Yeah, I have a question. The last time we discussed this project, someone had mentioned that it might be a medical office building here. You have 18,000 square feet divided among 5 different buildings. Do you anticipate that you will consolidate that space at some future time? Or do you think there is a market for, like in Building B, you've got 2,000 square feet. Doctors really are not single practitioners. That's not the marketplace.
Understood. We've actually developed several medical office buildings, and we have been working with a couple of the clients that we had worked with before to try and establish interest in the site. They've not committed to it yet. So it's difficult for us to lay the site out and design for a specific user that's really not committed to it. But yeah, we would expect if I get a medical office building user that wants 20,000 square feet of consolidated space, we would massage the plan to satisfy that need.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It was sprinkled throughout, and it seemed like a lot of medical office.
We still anticipate that the need's going to be here. Joe's had several conversations with several, practitioners, and by medical office, we would anticipate any kind of medical service, regular conventional doctors, chiropractor's office, dentist's office, and the like.
Right. Okay.
You have also, can we discuss, we're just talking here.
No, it's open discussion.
The bank. Building F, you have that. Is that going to be a signalized intersection there, or
no? That intersection on that particular plan is a right in and right out only.
So no left turn.
No left turns. There's only one full access intersection. That's that boulevarded intersection, that Lake Forest model that I was referring to.
What would be the access eastward? If I were traveling east on Dutchess Turnpike.
I'm going to jump back to the site plan. On your handout, you can probably see a little bit more clearly than we can see in here, but there are 2 different color roads laid out on the plan. There's minor differences in the shading. The very gray road is actually the primary road that we're actually anticipating. So you have access to that bank area from the primary entrance, or you have access from the right in, right out, or you have access from Concord Village Road.
So I'm seeing on the plan in front of me, access from Route 44 traveling westbound, you have access. And then you have egress going westbound from the site onto 44. But you don't have access traveling on 44 in either direction, going westbound or eastbound.
A user driving eastbound on 44 would turn into the main entrance to the community.
Okay.
And
That's your
traverse
plan?
that gray road, because that's a road. You'd notice that the road that moves along the, we'll call it the bottom side in the expanded image of the green has parallel parking. It's not a parking lot per se. It doesn't have the head-in parking that some of the others do. And they would be able to drive through and access that bank or the daycare through the community, through the project itself.
Okay. On another subject, it seems to me that the prior owner had a deeded easement to the pump station, which would be going up to Wartburg. And I'm wondering if there could be some discussion that our town engineer, unfortunately, is not here. If you had any discussion with him about providing access to the town possibly at some future date, since you're not choosing to use that pump station, if the town might have access to it?
Well, we've actually, one of the other reasons that we chose that particular corner, and I'm not sure how to get this up on the screen that I have on my screen right now. In that, the larger scale plan that shows the primary green, that right side of that drawing is anticipated. What's that?
Can you use your pointer to at least point out what you're talking about?
Or escape out of your presentation. It should be
It's right in front of Wartburg, John, up on the top of the...
Yeah, I have it up on my screen. I'm not quite sure why it's not coming up on this screen.
It's showing up here.
Let me close it. Perhaps I'll close the...
Maybe showing on a projector.
Let's see.
Did you catch anything?
You see the river there. It's stripers.
It's showing up on our screens here, but not the other one.
I'm not... Close that out. Will it open this one? I'm not sure how to get it up on the screen. I'm not seeing the same thing you are right now. But...
You got a board?
You could just point to it.
Point to it.
Fine.
So this is the corner that we're proposing
Right.
to start
Rich, can you grab the microphone?
Grab the microphone and just bring that easel a little forward, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See that okay?
Thank you.
That was for Ed.
Is this on?
I can see it real well.
So that pump station that you're referring to is located right here.
Right.
When we acquired this parcel, we actually have access to that pump station, and we are anticipating we may negotiate with the town for a temporary use of that pump station until we've expanded the treatment plant and extended the collection system down to service it. So we may actually choose to utilize that for this component of the job, which will ultimately end up being routed down to the sewage treatment plant that's currently at the Poughkeepsie Business Center. Okay, at that point in time, I mean, we would have no use for it. If the town needs access to the pump station, I mean, we don't own the pump station, it's owned by Wartburg.
Sure.
But we wouldn't necessarily need the capacity in it if you needed it, so.
The other part of that is you're going to be building a plant, a treatment facility.
Yeah.
And if again, unfortunately, the town engineer is not here, but I wonder if at some point we could have a discussion about possibly sizing some of the components, maybe even just in the collection system, so that, you know, if there were a need in the future for the surrounding areas to get flow to that plant, not at your cost, but, you know.
Understood. We had some earlier discussions about that, and the design of the facilities that we're looking at two different alternates right now. I just got the report from our engineers. Delaware Engineering is doing the evaluation of the facility. One of their charges is to design it such that it could be readily expanded should additional service area be necessary. I don't see too much of an issue with sizing some collection system for anticipated additional flow. That's not an issue.
Not dipping into your pocket. I just want to make, as long as you only have this opportunity on rare occasions, because for many, many years there have been proposals to expand the municipal sewer in that area, and they've all been defeated. But I think the time is not on their side.
It's definitely a failing.
It's actually, it was referenced in the original application. It was always intended to set it up so that it can easily be expanded to accommodate other service, additional service.
Okay, as long as it's part of the discussion, and not
Yeah, absolutely.
making any demands. I'm just thinking that we are a planning board, so if there's something that we can do
And a plan.
to plan. Yeah.
Plan for the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very good. Any other particular questions about the
You
plan?
talk about walkability. Now, are you referring to walkability within each side of 44? And if you're not, how do you get, we just had a big discussion about Marist students crossing Little Fulton Street, or Avenue, whatever it is, Fulton Street. Is there going to be access from either side across 44?
Well,
Without
as-
driving across?
As I had indicated
crosswalk.
before, we originally anticipated we were going to have a traffic circle in that
Now you're
area,
not
and some
gonna have it.
questions came up with respect to the pedestrian safety crossing the traffic, crossing the pedestrians crossing at that traffic circle. This intersection is proposed to be signalized. So we'll have a signalized intersection. You'll be able to cross when the signal's green for you to cross the, Route 44 is there.
Right.
Yeah.
You ever try to cross at Locust Grove?
Pardon me?
You know where Locust Grove
Yes.
is? Luck.
Well, Route 44 isn't quite as bad as Route 9, at least.
That's a divided highway. This isn't divided yet. Yeah.
And did you have this type of situation with both sides of a main road with any of the other models that you looked at that you could?
Well, certainly,
that you could have
certainly,
gotten
the one
experience
in
from?
Myrtle Beach is a much larger community, and there are actually several intersections within the project that are very similar to this. The primary means of access off of the main highway is a single-sided access into the town.
I assume we've had discussions with DOT about roundabout signal versus roundabout.
We had some
or-
early discussions with them, and they were actually very amenable to the roundabout, but after speaking with other consultants and also speaking with Mr. Gibbs with respect to the viability of the retail component and how they really are going to prefer to have a signalized intersection, we went in that direction.
Okay. Another comment I had was that, well, first of all, you fleshed out this thing really nicely. I think that you've got a lot of nice amenities for both in the commercial district as well as a lot of stuff for the residential playgrounds, pool, garages even, the community center, dog park, et cetera. So a lot of good work. I did see question, a lot of the playgrounds I wondered about, like maybe a sports court or something for older age, possibly in the green,
That's
possibly,
something we can look into.
possibly near the community center as a spot, but I don't know.
That's
That's
certainly
something
something
else.
we can look into. We've been actually discussing internally what sort of recreational amenities we want to try and incorporate in the project. And this
That's
was
on
the
the-
first cut through.
Yep.
I would
Sure
expect
it's-
it's gonna grow from there, so.
And, let's see. The one playground seemed, I don't know, it felt like it was on the south side, south.
Yeah, I'm not
west
happy with
side.
the location
Felt like
of
it
that
was
playground
stuck
either.
behind, okay. So maybe.
Particularly since
maybe-
that's an elevator service building, I would think it's gonna probably be more attractive to seniors. We are now looking into possibly siting that playground in this green right over here near the
Yeah,
townhouse units.
that's what, okay, I was thinking near the mail building or something. All right, and let's see. Trash, I guess, was one question I assume you have some street trash bins in the commercial area.
Yeah,
I saw trash bins around in general, the dumpster areas, but it seemed like there was a lack of dumpster areas in some of the apartment sections as well as,
We're actually studying that now to see if we need to add anything more. We actually based our volume of trash, the dumpster locations on Brookside Meadows and what we experienced there to make sure that
Okay.
we had enough dumpster space per dwelling unit.
okay, great.
So speaking of planning, the part in the middle that you don't own.
Right here?
Yeah. Someday you might acquire that, potentially.
Potentially. Never know.
That was one of my last comments was, you have screening on two sides of that, but on the kind of the southwest side of the Frank property there, it butts right up against the parking.
You're gonna wanna see some
We've actually spoken to him about this location, and he was actually fine with us cheating that corner, we can screen that. I don't have any
About a
issues with
fence?
it.
I'm just
Whether it be
thinking-
on either side, whether it be a fence or landscape.
Just
screening.
thinking of the car lights heading into his house
Understood.
and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
understood.
So if you did all of a sudden own that, would you, more housing there? It's too early to tell, but
Well,
would you put any
not sure as of
infrastructure
yet,
in the
but
ground?
I think the way it's situated right now can lend itself either to expanding on the commercial component or the residential component very effectively. I mean, we talked early on about if we were to acquire the Frank house itself, it may just stay as it is and be converted to a commercial use. So it would be a freestanding building with commercial use, and then we would just expand the parking into the yard area of the house. But we currently don't have a contract to acquire it.
I understand.
So
It's only been 15 years or more since you really got this far along.
It's taken a long time to get here, yeah. Well, we spent an awful lot of time trying to solicit, main users, because we would love to be able to have had a grocer that wanted to be on the site as an anchor. That would really attract a lot of the other users into the site. Unfortunately, we were not successful in acquiring it. So if that changes, we'll have to change the application along the way.
Now, to add to his point, can you speak a little bit more about what your proposed build-out is? I know you hinted you would start in that one corner. What are you thinking, and what timeframes are you thinking?
Our initial thoughts is, provided that demand is there, and we're very comfortable with the residential demand, it's the commercial demand that we're struggling to try and fill, is we would like to be able to build a project out within, approximately 5 years. It might go considerably longer than that if we can't get the users. We obviously, and I don't think it's in anyone's interest, we don't necessarily want to build structure and then have it sit vacant. I don't think that serves the town, and it certainly doesn't serve us or the community that we're trying to create. So again, the residential, we feel very confident with the residential demand. I'm sure you've all read articles about how rentals are in demand and for sale product are not necessarily in demand. Commercial, we're still working to try and get some more users. We did have some interest from a bank. We had some interest from a daycare, still not fully committed, actually 2 daycares. We had interest from a medical user initially that has since waned. We're still trying to solicit additional.
So you would start on the north side and proceed, or what's your concept at this point?
Well, we're initially anticipating starting in this section here and then expanding through, then creating this side of the Route 44 main street, so to speak, and then growing down into this area following. So we've got a concept phasing plan that Inside Engineering is looking at to see if it actually physically works with the infrastructure. We know how we would like to try and move through the project, but we obviously have the infrastructure work as we move through it as well. Some of that, once VHB has completed a lot of their traffic work, we'll have a better understanding of what threshold we need to meet before we need to have this intersection completed and before it needs to be signalized.
I have a question. Sorry. When you mentioned that you had a discussion, it was with the DOT, weighing signalized versus roundabout. Was any data generated prior to that discussion with regard to how they compared?
The primary intent of our original discussions with them is when we wanted to do the roundabout, when we thought that was the best way to go, and we frankly were very successful in convincing them that it was good. Obviously, they own some over in LaGrange. They just did the roundabouts in the town center there. They did the roundabouts on Raymond Avenue. They've compiled some data indicating that it wasn't, the world coming to an end like many people thought it was going to be when they initiated those roundabouts.
Can they make that data available to us?
I'm sure they can. I didn't ask for any specific information from them, but they do have some information about the performance of those roundabouts versus what they would have had if it was signalized and what it was before. I believe they mentioned some benefits associated with the time of travel from the beginning of Raymond Avenue to the other end of Raymond Avenue has actually improved.
Right.
Okay, Eric, could you contact them and see?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because I think we'd like to see that.
Right.
Because perception and reality often are at loggerheads.
Yep.
The perception here is you have a 2-lane road, 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. Anyone who's driven on that road, when there are buses on the road, when we get into seeker, we're going to have to look at traffic is going to be a big consideration. So clearly, whatever plan that you provide us is going to have to be written in such a way that it's readily understandable and supportable.
Traffic engineer for VHB that's charged with that is sitting in the audience right now.
Okay,
So
good.
she
Well
gives
then,
you loud and clear.
write it in words of one syllable.
That's a good lead into.
You know, we're not, I mean, we have some experience, reading reports, but there are a lot of people, particularly people who live there and use that road every day. If they come to a meeting, come to a public hearing, they're going to want to hear something that makes sense.
Yep.
Because to just look at it, it would say it's impossible. It just can't be done.
I mean, right now, they say it's hard to turn left onto 44.
Yeah, you can't do it. You can't make a left-hand turn. So whatever you do, I mean, when we get traffic studies, there's always a lot of data because you need a lot of data. But I think in the summary section of the report, it's got to be written in such a way that it's easily understood, and again, it's supportable.
To that end, Peter, Eric, introduce.
Yeah, Val, why don't you, Peter, thank you. I'm glad you got my cue card that I passed over a little while ago. I just wanted to take the opportunity to introduce representatives from VHB, which is the firm that the town has retained to assist with the environmental review of the project. And this is a bit of an unusual circumstance because in this case, the town and the applicant are jointly preparing the environmental impact statement on this project. With us tonight, Valerie Monastra, their project manager, and Wendy Hoaxberger, their traffic consultant, and they're available to answer the questions of the board tonight. I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves briefly and maybe take a microphone or have a seat.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the traffic study, and Wendy can provide a little bit more detail. She's actually going to be undertaking the actual traffic analysis and doing a traffic impact study. But then as part of the draft environmental impact statement, you will also have a whole traffic chapter, which basically summarizes the traffic impact study. So, my job will be to try to take that very, detailed number, type of study and then basically regurgitate it in layman's terms so that the public will be able to understand what the traffic impacts are and what the implications are of what's being proposed. And I'll just pass it over to Wendy, and she'll talk a little bit about what her traffic impact study is going to entail.
Sure. Again, for the record, Wendy Holzberger from VHB. And I mean, I understand your point. I've been doing this for quite some time, and what you're saying is the public typically, has concerns, and the town with the traffic.
Those are the people that we represent.
Yeah, absolutely. Understood. So what Valerie said is we'll have that big technical appendices with like the full detail, and then we'll try to pull that summary data, just kind of pointing out what the real important facts are and looking at, what needs to be done and addressing the speed issue with trying to get the town center plan and how all that's going to work.
Yeah, I think the concern is, in worst case scenario, if a fire truck or emergency vehicle had to get through there at any given time, we're not putting, it's not going to be a public safety issue.
Right,
basically.
absolutely. Understood. And, the scope of the study includes accident evaluation. It includes some travel time studies. It has detailed intersection analysis. All those components are going to be part of where our results and what our recommendations are.
Thanks.
And once we get to the public hearing stage and all that, we're going to have plenty of neighbors in here concerned, obviously, about the traffic, and rightfully so, and looking for improvement to their situations. And so,
just be prepared.
Yeah.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
So this is the easy night, is what you're saying? Understood.
For sure.
Thank you.
Do you have any overall timetable of implementation? Or is it too
We'd like a
soon
building
to?
permit as soon as you're willing to give us one.
I don't know if you're thinking.
We don't issue building permits.
Oh, that's right.
We're
thinking next spring, or
I can partially answer that. A lot of that's going to depend on the time that it takes to compile and evaluate data. The existing data, Valerie, you can jump in if I go off course at all, but basically a lot of the existing conditions data, which is the basis for environmental review, has already been compiled. And we're now, a lot of the plans have been provided only recently, and there's a lot more work, obviously, in taking a given proposal or a scope, a breadth of a proposal, and applying it to those existing conditions in order to evaluate what the conditions are going to be and what impacts might occur and how to address them. So I think they're, as a very overview of the process, they're moving into that phase of review now. But I think we were looking at sometime in the late spring, early summer, probably more in the early summer, of getting to an early draft, hopefully, but it's going to depend a lot on how the plan and come in and the review go. Like I said, this is the first time that I've seen this. So a lot of the information is very, very recent.
Mr. Palladino, are you the architect?
Well, I'm the in-house architect for Kirchhoff, so what I do is I administer and oversee the different architects that work for us and planners.
I just want to say, whoever, the architecture here paid close attention, I think, to the framework and the philosophy behind the town center concept.
Yeah,
you did a terrific job.
Union Studios has tremendous amount of experience developing town centers, mostly in the Northeast, but they have also on the West Coast. And Bob Gibbs is also another person that's worked on over 400 town centers.
Well, you hit the target.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Agreed.
Gio's being a bit modest, too. He actually himself has quite a bit of experience to marshal these guys.
Richard, the nearest traffic signal from your entrance is Delavab, if I'm not mistaken. What's the rough distance on that?
I'm thinking it's 800 feet to that intersection. Not sure. I'm looking at Dawn from Inside Engineering. She might have that.
Was that Barnes Drive?
I'm just thinking about the signalization between the two.
Well, they'll certainly, I think, and when they do this, there'll certainly need to be coordination between those signals, so they'll be in sync with each other, so that you're not waiting for a green light. You get the green light, you approach at a new red light when you get to the next intersection.
But the next one is way out, right?
There's not another intersection, not another signalized intersection.
So you get to Pleasant Valley, right? Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions? Comments? We're good, thank you.
As one that's joined the board within the last year, this has definitely given me a good idea of what's going on in the project.
Any questions anybody has from the board at any point in time, I think you all have my contact information, so.
We're just looking forward to.
We actually would love to be able to draw some input, and you've given us some good input today in terms of the further development of the site. So.
Just to go back to your question on the houses that are not yours, I've talked to those people, I'm sure you have. I mean, this project has been going on for a long time, but what's the feeling there? Even the people in the corner there, where you're kind of ending a path or walkway there.
Which
on
is it this? You have these two here, and you have this one here.
Yeah, next to the primary access on the larger side of the road there.
But we're flanked by residents.
Yeah,
this
so
one
there,
here,
those
this
folks
corner.
there, yeah.
We've met with them to talk to them about the project and draw some input from them. They've not expressed any specific interest to selling their property to us. We've spoken with the Ortegas as well as Mr. Frank, which we acquired the balance of the property. Mr. Ortega wasn't interested at the time in terms of selling his property, and Mr. Frank, he's getting on in years, so he may at another point in time entertain selling the sale of the property.
Sure. How about the horse?
I'm sorry?
How about the horse?
Horse.
There's a horse there, right?
No.
There was some Frank property.
Not now.
Oh, is he gone?
I think so. I don't know.
Oh, he passed too, huh? Okay.
Okay.
You also have.
Thanks,
Did
Mr.
Carol
Ed.
find it, by the way?
You're welcome.
Okay.
Have residents on Darrell Place, I guess, that are going to be behind it.
Yeah, obviously,
to
you know, they're our
talk to about
closest
screening.
residential
Right.
neighbors on Darrow. That's one of the reasons why we had proposed to do the townhouses, the two-story townhouses, to separate them.
And wasn't there some talk about an access from Darrow down into the project?
We are talking with one of the property owners about gaining access, but it's not shown on the plan now because
Right.
we haven't made a contract with them as of yet, but there is a potential for us to gain access here, principally to benefit the residents. of
Right, so they could exit through the,
into the project
sure.
and access to the controlled intersection.
Right.
Yep.
We're not anticipating traffic going the other way.
Nope. They've got the hill there to deal with.
We'll tell you what, keep it going and come back sooner than later.
We hope to be coming back in a month.
Good.
Update you on where we are, so.
Okay.
All right?
Yes, we're looking forward to it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All
Nice job.
Rich, when you get a chance, can you forward to Carol in our office a PDF of this presentation to include in our files electronically? Thank you.
Okay, second plan review, Centerpoint Retail Development. Planning Board to declare lead agency intent for proposed construction of a 4,860 square foot retail building, associated parking area, utility connections, landscaping, and lighting improvements, 3350 Route 9, North Zone BN Neighborhood Business, 2.37 acres, unlisted action, Marist Centerpoint LLC owner. Hello. Welcome, everybody.
Eric?
I still think of Dunkin' Donuts.
Good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Let me take you through the project briefly.
Sure.
Okay, Justin Dates from Mazer Consulting.
Okay.
I also have with me Bob Turner from Tickleman Architecture, who's put together some elevations and renderings of the proposed building. We were here some time ago to present the project, and since then we've had a few meetings with Mr. Holman and Mr. Wilson to kind of fine-tune parts of the project. As stated, the site is currently the Rite Aid parcel, we'll call it. On the plan, I think the plan that everyone has, just to orient everyone, north faces down on the page. This is Marist Drive, Washington Street on that side. Rite Aid is really on the western side of the site, and right now there's a small grass area, lawn area there that we're looking to put the proposed development. It's about 0.4 acres in size. The entire lot is in the town's BN Neighborhood Business District. And there's currently access out to, on the western side here, out to 9, and then out to Washington Street. Both those we look to maintain, no improvements to either of those access points into the site. So, as I mentioned, this lawn area, we're looking to develop, or the applicant's looking to develop a building 4,860 square feet. Right now, it's got 5 tenant spaces. The applicant is actively seeking tenants for the project. There's no identified users as of right now. But what we are looking to do is get the building into the site. If everyone's familiar with the existing condition of the site, there's on the eastern side, there's about 15 or 16 parking spaces behind Rite Aid, right adjacent to the drive-through. Underutilized. Really, if you go there any time of day, those spaces really aren't used. So what we look to do is use some of those spaces along with 16 spaces that we'd be building out for the proposed building. So from a code standpoint, right now the parcel has 64 total spaces on it for the Rite Aid itself. By code and the square footage of the Rite Aid, it only needs 46. All right, so we have quite a few surplus spaces, we'll call them. So what we identified is 50 of the spaces, which are on the west and also the north side of the site here, those would be designated or utilized for Rite Aid. So that puts us 4 over what's actually required by code. And it really is the most convenient spaces for any user that would go to the site to Rite Aid. So then we would look, as I mentioned, to have these rear spaces and 16 proposed spaces be utilized for our building. So our building itself would require 20 spaces by code, and we're proposing 29. So we have a surplus there. access through the site, we would not be looking to change, as I mentioned, any circulation patterns for the Rite Aid. We would look to have a one-way access into our parking here, and that would come out into the existing drive aisle over for Rite Aid. I'm calling this centerpiece kind of between the buildings, kind of the service area. As I mentioned, there's the drive aisle and drive-through canopy for Rite Aid here. There's an existing dumpster in the back. We'd be looking to add another dumpster next to that for our proposed building. And then drop-off loading could be in the back side of our building there. So we would be looking to tie into the town water and sewer. We have water connection existing out into the entrance to Washington Street. There is also a sanitary manhole just off our property in the right-of-way there that we're looking to tie our sanitary sewer service into. One of the points that we worked out with Mr. Holman and Mr. Wilson, we have two new sidewalk connections. We have one that we're going to extend out to Washington Street here along the existing access, and then also down on Marist Drive, we'd be looking to connect to the sidewalk down at this location. So we have two spots where people can, walking along the adjacent roads, can get into the site and access to the users for this building. I think that summarizes the site elements. As I mentioned, Mr. Turner's here to go through the architecture, if the board would like to.
Okay, we'll take it, if you like it, that's fine. Okay. We'd also like to hear a little bit about what kind of tenants you're proposing to attract.
Good evening. The idea and concept for the elevations of the building are to try to coordinate them with the existing Rite Aid and using the similar materials as well as the color palette. So what you end up by having is we have the ephes material that consists of a majority of the body of the building across the back. This is the side that faces the health club. This would be the corner element down, trying to think, it'd be the northeast corner here, and then this would be the side that faces directly toward the Mid-Hudson Regional Medical Center. What we're also trying to do with this building is to break it up, and so it's not one entire large mass. The idea would then allow a tenant to maybe occupy this space, that occupy two here, or maybe if they go in here, a single tenant could occupy this one, or vice versa. There's a lot of flexibility of what they can do in regards to that. Materials that we're working with consists of course, the ephes material, which is the beige that we brought off of the Rite Aid building. We're accenting it with I would point out the split-face concrete block, which would be broken into 8-inch cubes or 8-inch squares. That happens to pull off of the accent color that is on the Rite Aid building, which is a dark brown. Then we are bringing in a hardy board, hardy plank, hardy trim that is worked around the building at various locations. You can see it across the top here in these elements. That also is a color that was pulled off of the trim and such that you find on the Rite Aid building. But with this building, I know with Rite Aid, they accent with blue because that's mainly their color. On this case, we are going to be accenting in red. We'll be having a standing seam metal roof, as well as a rust color fabric canopies that will go over top of the entry doors. And then, of course, all the storefronts will be the anodized aluminum. There will be a level change as per the grade, because the grade kind of drops off, and you can see that here. And that's going to be accommodated within the site plan itself. And that would be it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any tenants that have signed up to occupy any of this space?
No, not as of right now. We'd be looking for, retailers, office, service type users, but nothing specific at this time.
We're always curious if you end up with a high traffic volume type of establishment, it creates a deficit of parking or congestion, just, not sure that, well, it's not that large a building, so, okay, I was just curious.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think as they're identified and we're going through the process, we make the board aware. And I think that was kind of part of the discussions with the parking itself. That being that we don't have any set users right now, that lends itself to some fluctuation depending on what they may be.
Okay. I mean, even if it was, say it was a Dunkin' Donuts without a drive-through, it would be quite a few cars during peak periods. People would park and go in and out and so on.
As part of our submission, we did include our traffic engineer. We had done some counts. It was 2014 that we looked at traffic for this area. We just did some more in April just to see where that stands. And actually, the AM numbers are less. The PM peaks were pretty much consistent, but our traffic engineers feel that similar levels of service and access in and out of the site, that it would not impact at these locations. So, but if there's further detail that the board may want on that, we can by all means provide that.
We'll see where we get with that. Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions from the board? Let me just go around. Ben, anything you want to say, Eric?
No, we've just, we feel like it's come quite a ways since we first started talking about a year ago. Certainly in the design of the building is a great improvement over from where it started. Obviously, there would be work to do as far as the review and readiness. I guess one question I had, we didn't talk a lot about last time we met, maybe many months ago, was the buffering along the side, I guess it would be the north side of the site out towards the crossover. Are you thinking, had you thought about the landscaping on the buffering on that side, or where would the site be opened up to? Right now, it's pretty overgrown. And so had you given some thought as to what you're anticipating doing with the landscape buffering, which is always been a part of the plan for that site?
Here, or try the other one. I know that one was getting low.
They take a few seconds to actually activate after you turn it on.
Does that work? There we go. So I think you're referring to right now, there's a pretty substantial buffer just off the property in the right-of-way there. We would look to do some maintenance on that buffer at this point. Obviously, we have our north side of the building there that we'd like to have somewhat visible, depending on what, for the tenants of that space. And then also we'd be looking to propose plantings and, street trees along our parking. Obviously, we need to screen the parking in that area, so we'd be looking at evergreen shrubs along the perimeter there, maybe some street trees. We also just have to be mindful, and as we noted in the traffic letter there, that we don't want to impact any site triangles coming out of there. So we have some work to do with that as part of the developed site plans.
Mm-hmm. I was curious as to the structure of this building. You seem to have already gotten to the point of, your design for architecture, but I assume it's going to be some kind of a steel structure building to leave an awful lot of latitude as to what you do underneath, because this would suggest a certain tenant versus if you have a structured building such that you can do a lot of augmentation for variation of various offices or retail or whatever. I would hope that's being considered.
With the design for the structural, there's a lot of versatility that we can end up by using here on this site.
That's what I was
You can go with, of course, as you said, there could be a structural steel column grid system, that is accented with wood trusses, or you could go with an entirely metal, steel system.
The only thing
So-
I'm thinking about is there's been so much change with all the other malls in terms of buildings changing and new tenants, and some of them going wider, some of them going much smaller. I would think you would build that into the flexibility of this building.
We would definitely like to try to make sure that we don't have a lot of column bays, and so that way you could end up by having larger open spaces within the building.
This, as it stands today, suggests very long but very narrow building space.
The spaces that we provide, in this case, if you're looking at the 5 tenant spaces that are proposed as being a maximum build-out, they're basically the average size of what a rentable space is. I'm trying to remember, usually they run anywhere from like 15 to 16 feet wide, and usually like 50 feet deep is one of the norms, or is a size that is usually preferred on a lot of.
Well, you're suggesting to us, I guess, that it's going to be either small retail or service-oriented, I think.
Well, as they said, I mean, they're looking for tenants right now, but it could be a small tenant, it could be a larger tenant, and they could occupy 2 of the spaces. Or if somebody comes in, who knows, it could be, they might end up by taking the entire building. You don't know.
As long as you got the versatility, that's all I was.
Correct.
Thank you.
As I see your plans here, the exit and the entrance area, it appears that the curb and abuts, is that the Mike Ortega driveway going up next to it? There seems like they're almost right on top of each other. Am I misseeing that?
Are you speaking, the access points over
Right.
here? Yep. Yeah, that's the adjacent driveway location.
I mean, basically, right abutting it. I mean, refresh my memory regarding.
It looks
how
roughly
far that
20
is.
feet or so.
Is
looks
it really?
roughly.
Because it looks like it abuts it here.
Yeah,
There's
that's a known condition, yeah.
There's a small, like, island area
Okay, so
between.
that's known, and we've talked about this in the past. This is not a wider.
It's not a good intersection at all.
People can go out that way now.
But they haven't
It has
widened
been.
it. It looks like.
People go out that way today.
Yeah, very little though.
True.
But what I can see, because whenever I go to Ortega's, I hardly see any traffic there.
And as
That's
I
why
mentioned.
I was curious.
Yeah, the current site access is to remain at this point. We're not widening it or anything of that nature. That condition will remain the same as the chairman stated.
Okay. Brian, anything at this point?
No, at this time.
Peter?
Looking at the plan, the parking in front of the building, there's a shaded area with 2 areas indicated for handicap parking. Is that shaded area provision, as you sometimes see in parking areas, for the people parking in a handicap space to have access to get in and out? Or is that an actual parking space?
No, it's.
Are you talking the crosshatch area between the spaces? That's the required ADA loading space.
Okay,
So
then
it's not a parking space.
Then you only have 15 spaces there, not 16, if I count correctly.
Nope, there's eight on each side.
Including the shaded area.
No.
No, I mean, look where the grease trap is, that makes it's hard to see.
Peter,
one
the
under
grease trap, the grease trap.
Over the grease trap, that's a
Under the
The
parking.
grease trap is underground.
It's really, the parking here is problematic, I think. You know, you've got 5 spaces located behind the building. Is there going to be any access for customers over the loading area?
No, there
So
are
you have to
sidewalk.
walk- You have to park in the back of the building and walk all the way around to get access to the entrance.
I would tend to think that back areas, I consider it the service area to your employees, maybe parking back there, and leaving the front spaces for the customers. But there is, on this northern side here, we have a sidewalk that wraps completely around the building on the north side here, so if you did park here, you can walk safely on a sidewalk to get to the front of the building.
And to follow up on what Ed had to say, when I look at this space, you know, it's an open space. You have roughly 3 stores, 800 square feet each store, and you have two 1,200 square foot stores that make up the 4,800 square feet. That could become a 4,800 square foot space or a 2,400 square foot space with 3 800 square foot stores, or any combination of the above. And, I mean, I think we really have to take a close look at, if there's going to be sufficient parking, or whether, you should rethink, the sizing of the building. I mean, for your own sake, or for your tenant's sake, because if you don't have adequate parking there, it's not going to be for anyone's benefit.
Understood, and I think that's, as I mentioned, why the zone itself only requires 20 spaces. So we do have excess above that. And as for the building itself, I think there's quite a bit of time that the applicant and the architect have put in to create a versatile footprint for whatever users may come down. And like I said,
And the plus side is you may get some pedestrian traffic from Marist, which is right across the street, depending on the type of tenant that you have there.
Correct, and I think that's in working with the town and the planners there. That's why we look to put the sidewalk accesses down to where we did. So.
I'll just mention, since we did have quite a number of discussions about the parking demand, and, we haven't even started any formal review yet, but based on the BH district multiplier of 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of building, no matter how the building is divided up, if that multiplier results in that demand for 20 spaces. Obviously, the actual demand, according to the type of use, may vary greatly. The board has the discretion during review, if it wants to look at the potential impact of a more intensive parking demand from a particular type of use that's permitted in the BH district, the planning board is within its rights to do so. That said, there's sufficient extra parking available on this site overall, shared between the uses, that we could go through that exercise, and we would need to do so in order to evaluate it. I'm not going to presuppose the outcome. But there's a fair amount of extra parking on this site already. And so we felt that they were at least in a position to come to the board and initiate a discussion about what issues might be relevant to the project, and it sounds like parking would be one that we'd want to look at.
Anyone who's been to a shopping mall will watch the drivers circle, endlessly trying to get that parking space near the entrance. That's all I'm saying.
I hope this is a problem that we have, because that means he has tenants.
Really? I'm with you.
The thought also, in all honesty, the thought also was that for this scale of retail use at this location, some percentage of the traffic being near Marist College is going to be walk-in, as opposed to along Route 9, where you would expect the great majority of traffic to be vehicular.
I hope that happens.
Yeah.
It would be a good problem to have.
Not only, parking, I mean, the fact that you say there's you have the 13 spaces behind is what they have access to. Just make sure you take down the sign that says pharmacy parking only. And that looks good. And the fact that you are trying to draw Marist students, you should also consider a bike rack toward the front there. I think there's a wide sidewalk, especially in the
I told you,
southeast corner area there.
We could do that, sure.
Ben? You good? Okay. Anybody else? So I'd like to make a motion that the planning board declare its intent to be lead agency to coordinate the environmental review of the proposed project as a non-listed action, and authorize the planning department's circulation of a notice of said intent, a copy of the AAF, and a copy of the application to the identified involved agencies.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I further move the planning board defer action on this application pending establishment of the lead agency, and direct the applicant to respond to comments of the planning board and those received from town departments and agencies, including but not limited to the following: 1, A, B, and C, and any comments perhaps that were made this evening.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Were there any written comments provided on that?
No, not a lot.
There was just, Carol, did they get a copy?
Circulate for comment, right?
Here, you can have this copy. There's just 3 things, so you can certainly have that. Not a problem. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you come back. Okay, other business. Dahlia site plan, time extension for a approved site plan for 4 senior housing and 2 mixed-use buildings. Total of 84 dwelling units and 10,124 square feet of non-residential. Sophia's Way and Violet Avenue lots and 35 Violet Avenue zoned R20 residence, single family, 20,000 square feet, and SHOD Senior Housing Overlay District, 7.01 acres. Negative declaration adopted March 19, 2015. Conditional site plan approval granted September 17, 2015, and amended on March 17, 2016. Linda E. Dahlia, owner. I gotta find my...
Want me to make it? I'll do it.
Sure, go ahead.
I move the planning board grant a time extension of conditional site plan approval for 90 days from June 15th of 2017 to September of 2017.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the planning board grant a time extension of conditional site plan approval for 90 days from June 15th, 2017 forward to September 13th, 2017. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. D2, Arlington Farms Malabar Realty LLC, time extension of an approved site plan for proposed demolition of the existing structure on the site and the construction of a 1-story gas station convenience store, 3,400 square feet with a gas canopy and 4 gas pumps. 798 Dutchess Turnpike and 219 Over Rocker Road, Zone BH, Highway Business District, .81 acres. Secret negative declaration adopted February 19, 2015. Conditional site plan approval granted December 17, 2015. Malabar Realty LLC owner.
I move that the planning board grant a time extension of conditional site plan approval for 2 90-day periods from June 15th of 2017 forward to December 5th, 2017.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the planning board grant a time extension of conditional site plan approval for 2 90-day periods from June 15, 2017 to December 5th, 2017. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I think that's it.
I move we terminate the meeting.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, the meeting be terminated. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These students know